You're watching Worldview Tube, a Brannon House television network.
The Tamara Scott Show. Tamara has served as the state director for one of America's largest pro-life, pro-family public policy organizations. In 2007, Tamara was named one of America's top 10 most influential kingmakers by the Religion News Association. Tamara has spent years proclaiming and defending the values of a Christian worldview that is the foundation of our constitutional republic. And now, here is your host, Tamara Scott.
Hey everybody, welcome. I am Tamara Scott. This is the Tamara Scott Show, where we help you live God's Word in today's world. Always grateful that you can join us every Monday through Friday, noon to 1 p.m. Central Time. Noon to 1 p.m. Central Time. So if you're in the Midwest, you can join us over lunch. Otherwise, some of you join us in the morning. You're still having coffee and just going about your day. Others of you are already into the afternoon break. So we just thank you whenever you can. These shows are available at Worldview Weekend or worldviewtube.com/vault. Now, they're free and complimentary, and I'll try to get some of them up on our Facebook page, but they're complimentary for 7 days, and then they do go behind that paywall to help fund the network, which we're so thankful to have, WVWTV.com. Brannon House is one of the few that can handle so many different topics. He's been doing these shows and these interviews and Worldview Weekends and seminars and documentaries for 35 plus years. Multiple books. And so we're just thankful to have him and this network that he was smart enough to start long before COVID, when everybody else figured out this was a new pathway to communicate. All right. As you know, we talked to you about a little bit of everything and anything on this show. And today, we're going to try and talk to the headlines a little bit, but I've got to get back to that page very quickly. And so in the headlines, we know, let's go very quickly to the Kentucky situation. That is probably I won't say it's the most heartbreaking because we're still reeling over Texas, but yet another heartbreaking and unnecessary and senseless situation. And so we have that situation where a gunman shot a state trooper, and then a short time later went into a church, shot two individuals there who happened to be a mother and daughter, and then wounded a couple of others who are in critical and stable condition, and as well as a state trooper is also, I believe, in stable condition. The gunman was, I believe, killed, is deceased. I don't know if he shot himself. I've got the article for you from the KentuckyToday.com on the Tamara Scott Show Facebook page, but I don't have it right in front of me. So just another senseless, tragic situation. This has nothing to do with guns. It sounds like it was a family situation. He was looking for a mother and her children, and she was not there. I guess that's the one time it might be good not to be in the house of the Lord. I don't know what she knew, what she didn't know, but she was not there, unfortunately. He did shoot a mother and a daughter, and it sounds like they were all related. The pastor, who was also shot, sounds like he was related as well, Beverly Gum, and I'm not remembering the daughter's name, and the pastor, I believe, was Jerry Gum. Small town, rural America. That's not uncommon at all. Everybody knows everyone if they're not related to them. And so our hearts go out to those families. And again, it's not the gun. It's not the presence of a gun in the hand. It's the absence of God in the heart. And it sounds like that's what we're dealing with so many issues. And so our hearts just go out there. Other headlines, Bongino and Bondi are in the news, but Bongino is already, and for more information on this, I'm just going to guide you to Conservative Treehouse. Conservative Treehouse is probably one of the more accurate sources on both sides of the aisle, no matter the issue. And they had written in February that it's not uncommon for Bongino to become riled or upset and take a step back. I guess he used to do that on a show every so often. I don't know. So they're saying they expected him to be back. They just needed to step away for a day or two. I don't know many jobs you can do that, but if that's the case, and I did see an interview with him on Hannity, and it does look like he seems that he's going to stay in and keep moving forward. This is over the Epstein list, which Brannon House, I think, somewhat broke on this show a week ago on Tuesday. It happened that morning in a cabinet meeting when someone asked about it. And of course, like I said at that time, if that reporter was interrupting the purpose of a meeting that was maybe to be on the Texas flooding, as they said, or maybe to be on a different topic, then I can see why they would become aggravated and steer it back. But as I also said, this president and every candidate we know runs on transparency and accountability. And if anybody can handle it, Trump can. And so while many of us are waiting and not so pleased with what we're hearing in some of the comments about not having a list all of a sudden, if you know Trump, I think we'll hear more. I don't think it's done, and I think there's a reason he's saying what he's saying. And so I'm going to hold on, but as Reagan said, trust and verify, trust and verify. And so we'll continue to pursue this issue. There's a lot of unanswered questions, and there are a lot of people, in spite of what anyone says, there are a lot of people who are very concerned about this, and it is on their minds, and it isn't old news, because there are still victims here who are still healing and in need of recovery over it. All right. Enough said. I had one more headline, but I don't have it right in front of me, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest if I can. Dr. Linda Johnston is joining us. She's been a guest on this show. Many of you were very, very pleased to have her join me during COVID when we were dealing with so many of the restrictions. And I know she helped some of you who were, one was trying to find needing a transplant and being told they needed the vaccination. And I think she was working with you, doing what she could on that. So we so appreciate her love of people, her compassion, but her expertise. The book that she has, and the book that I'll show you, is Everyday Miracles. This is not new. Everyday Miracles. She was one of the first writing about the holistic medicines, homeopathy, I think is what we call it. But here's what it says about the book. It's a great insight gained about homeopathic treatments. Practitioners of conventional medicine have begun to recognize the benefits of these natural techniques. Endorsement from physicians and from success rate of these remedies has led to unmatched popularity of holistic medicine in today's culture. Today, we're going to specify on one area, but first let me welcome Linda. Dr. Johnston, thank you for joining me.
No, it's really good to be back. I've always enjoyed being on your show and your audience participation. It's really been great.
Thank you. And we'll tell everybody, if you want to try and send me an email at the tamarascottshow@gmail.com, or you can message me on the Tamara Scott Show Facebook page, but I'm not good at seeing those. I'll try and keep an eye on those, but I've got 3 screens in front of me right now. And in a way, we'll work and see if we can find some way to do a text line or something so we can have more. I know you love the real-time communication with our guests, and it was fun hearing it. It was fun seeing it when you were on with us. All right, so today we're going to focus on one area that you were one of the first that I heard talk about this so well. There are several others I've also interviewed, but you were able to just discuss it so very, very well. So I'm going to head right into it if we can. And I'm watching my time because we have so much to discuss as well. We're going to talk about childhood vaccinations. And Linda, you brought forward a point yesterday, and I'm just going to ask you to share. We're not going to talk about any of this to make anyone feel bad if there's been a vaccination and someone is showing adverse reactions, a child is now harmed. But we continue to bring this information, and I hadn't done it for a while because we got so caught up with all the COVID vaccines. But I want to come back to this. There is more light coming on it now with RFK in his position. But we don't do this to make any parent feel bad. We do this to help others from having their child harmed. Is that a good way to say it?
Well, absolutely. And one of the big problems I've encountered over the decades I've been dealing with parents and vaccinations and questions about vaccinations is that when a parent who has started to investigate and realize that on their own investigations, and with the increasing amount of information that's coming out about the dangers of vaccines and the lack of safety data and some of the misinformation that has been propagated by what had been trusted institutions, there comes a mantle of guilt. What have I done to my children? What have I done to cause the problem? Have I caused problems to my children that I vaccinated before? And I find that this sometimes can be really crippling. So we want to say to parents that you can, at any moment, and this is true of all of us, at any moment you can only make the best decision you can with the available data. we're always growing and learning, and things that we knew before that we trusted turned out not to be true. Some things that were true were not true, can become true. So it's just a matter of settling in yourself. You just, in your heart, do the best thing you can do every single day. And then the next week and the next week and the next week, things may be different, but you can't judge yourself what you did in the past based on the information you had. So I really encourage anyone who has changed their mind about vaccines or become aware of harms they weren't aware before, is have compassion for yourself and congratulate yourself on growing and learning and accepting new information. But please don't be burdened with guilt about what you did in the past, given the situation that you had at that time.
Yeah, thank you. And I know before, it used to be a concern, and I think it was you that said this. The problem is, to get an exemption, you have to have had one child already harmed to get an exemption for any remaining children in your family. It was just impossible. I think it is now easier. I think Iowa just passed a law this year in their legislature. I think other state legislatures are doing the same, to allow parents the decision of whether or not they vaccinate their children, to have religious exemptions and other exemptions they're available to them. So I think we are moving forward, and we are helping parents in that area.
Well, I think that's really fantastic, but it is just appalling to me that a parent has to get permission from the government to take care of their own child in the way that they knew that's best. I mean, have we really come to that position? Unfortunately, there's still some states that as more and more information becomes aware, and legislatures are responding, which I think is fantastic. But other states just are going in the opposite direction, taking more and more parental rights away. Taking children away from their parents when they don't endorse a child's delusion about sexual identity or these kind of things. So yes, there's steps in the right direction, and I'm very, very pleased with that. But certainly, we have still a far way from the idea that parents are the parents of their children, and that's obviously the ultimate goal.
A great reminder. Thank you very much. I should have known better. Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up. Absolutely. They are our children. We shouldn't need anybody's permission to raise them how we see fit, and especially medically. Thank you for that. All right, let's go to photo 2, Thomas, if we can. Thomas is our producer today. We're so thankful for the great folks we have in the studio. Reagan always did such a great job for us as well. And so now we're working with Thomas, and I'm just thankful for each and every one of them. Brandon does such a great job of recruiting and bringing in just the best talent. All right, so there you go. I don't know about you, but if childhood vaccination scheduled increased from 10 doses before 1986 to 90 doses in 2025, I would start to ask questions. And this is from Raising Lions, Not Sheep. And we'll see several of her posts on here today. All right, so let's talk about this real quickly. I think I have, okay, let's hold on here. Okay, before 1986, Dr. Johnston, 10 doses, 10 vaccines. Was that from birth through kindergarten? Because now they're vaccinated.
That was kind of the sum total of the vaccine schedule. And usually by the most vaccines were up until 6 months of age, and then after that there was a dose of MMR at 15 months of age, and that was kind of it. That there wasn't much after that, unless there was a tetanus after an injury. So now, when you look at the schedule, it is. He's right. There's 90 vaccines, and they're often given multiple, up to 8 or 10 at one time. So there's never been any testing of the individual vaccines for safety. And there certainly has never been any thought about testing the vaccines when they're combined. So if you have 4 vaccines, then you actually have 16 combinations. So it's like getting you have the individual 4 vaccines, but each vaccine in combination with each of the other vaccines and each of the other 2 vaccines, you end up with what amounts to 16 different kind of combinations. So when you're talking about 90 vaccines, you can imagine. And no safety studies are ever done on this kind of schedule where you're injecting these things at the same time or within a short period of time. like the 2, 4, and 6 month schedule for multiple vaccines, and that 2-month period interval is just so infinitesimally short. So it's the fact that we're doing this to babies who are growing, they're not developed. Their brains, their neurologic system, their bones, their muscles, everything is in a state of infancy. It's not mature. They're not growing. So the growth in that first 7 years of life is to fortify or to finish the job of these organ systems. So when you introduce toxins like formaldehyde and mercury and aluminum and other heavy metals, or as we know, DNA fragments and other nasty chemicals, even the original smallpox vaccine that is known to have simian virus cancer-causing viral particles in it, and you're injecting these in infants whose body's job in those first years is to finish the job of growth and get kind of these organ systems online. Well, how can they possibly mature and grow in the right way when you're introducing toxic chemicals right at the growth stage? Now, I'm not saying these chemicals are healthy for an adult, but they're certainly cause untold irreparable damage when introduced in an infant.
All right. So you mentioned the 10, and let's go to the photo there, if we can, Thomas, of Dr. Paul Thomas. Dr. Paul Thomas said 6-month well-check visit is the most dangerous visit that babies will ever encounter. That's what he is saying now, because of those combinations you're talking about. They may get 10 doses or 10 different vaccines in one visit. Linda, that would be terrible as an adult. We all know how we feel if you've gone and gotten a tetanus, if you've gone and gotten a vaccine, which we'll do a show on adult vaccines maybe later, because it's a whole nother mess too. But can you imagine 10 in one day for an infant or a toddler? A 6-month is what we're talking about right now. And so it says 6-month well check is one of the most dangerous visits. The baby is hit with 10 vaccines containing dangerous levels, as you say, of aluminum, a known neurotoxin, which most people may not even understand that, hepatitis B. All right, let me ask you this, Linda. Is there any reason a newborn, a 6-month, needs hepatitis B vaccine?
Not in any world of reality, not ever. I mean, you might as well say, oh, we need to inject them for dengue fever, or some virus that only is in Africa, or there's absolutely no rationale whatsoever. And these hepatitis vaccines are given within the first 24 hours of life, and it's to prevent things. Contaminants that are only at risk for promiscuous adults, promiscuous sexual partners, homosexuality partners, intravenous drug addicts. So if you're looking to prevent those diseases, where in the world does a 1-day-old possibly ever have any rationale? So it's not just that. I mean, I think we need to separate the vaccines that people have said in their own minds have some value versus the ones that are completely ridiculous and harmful. I mean, really harmful.
And so I don't have the source right in front of me, but it was that this vaccine was created for those who are intravenous drug users or prostitutes, and found out that those folks really don't do wellness checks. So this vaccine wasn't making much money. So pharmaceutical changed it for newborns, because folks are good about getting vaccines for newborns, and therefore it became more profitable. I can't remember the source I read that on. If that's true, it is disgustingly sad. But as you say, there is absolutely no reason that a child under normal circumstances would need this. And if there's any reason where they would, first off, the mother is tested So if there's any situation with the mother, that would be made known. And secondly, if a child is being harmed in some way that this could be an issue, then there's a bigger issue than a vaccine, and it's going to come to light, and there are other medical issues that are going to be needed.
This brings up another really important issue, is the word vaccine got imbued with such honor and such trust because of the smallpox vaccine and the original, the diphtheria, pertussis, and tetanus. So those original early polio, that because it seemed, and this is arguable, it seemed that they were responsible for the decrease in the incidence of those kind of diseases, which people greatly feared, polio and smallpox and measles. And that so the word vaccine now has this equity built in. So when they create vaccines that are ridiculous and harmful and have no rationale, like the hepatitis vaccine in infants, it sort of runs under the cover of this trust that has been built into anything vaccine. So that's why it could slip in when it may, if anybody thought about it for a minute, would think, why does my infant need to be protected against a disease from intravenous drug use? So that bubble got burst with the atrociousness of the COVID and the COVID mRNA treatments they aren't vaccines, but they got subsumed under this vaccine mantle. But they were so egregiously bad and so harmful that the little silver lining from all that suffering and continued suffering from that jab is that it has broke the spell of this automatic trust on anything named vaccine. And now we're looking at all of these. Why do I need a pneumococcal vaccine? Why do I need a meningitis vaccine? Why does my child need all these different ones that are now put in? So the good news is, I think more than ever, and you've probably noticed it too, ever since that disastrous situation in the last few years we've seen, that's when the growth of skepticism, proper skepticism against vaccines and demand for safety studies, it's really a result that that the lies that were told on that particular topic.
All right, Thomas, I mislooked my shot clock, and I so appreciate that shot clock, but it was behind my part of my camera, and I misread it. Would you rather, Thomas, go to break now, or you want me just to combine the first and second break? We can combine. Excellent. All right, Linda, we're going to jump to the issue of what we used to know as SIDS, sudden infant death. Mm-hmm. Oddly enough, after COVID, we started talking about sudden adult death. And oh my goodness, the one thing that would have correlated or been similar was all of a sudden adults were being vaccinated, weren't they, with COVID-19 vaccinations. And then we started seeing sudden adult deaths. Interesting, isn't it? All right, so I want to come back to that. I'll let you if you want to interject there. I'm being half cheeky, I guess, but.
Well, first of all, I really think we have to be proper in our terms. The COVID mRNA was not really under the definition of vaccine. So I think it's proper not to call them vaccines, because they aren't. They were a genetic treatment. The government changed the definition of vaccine so that they could include the COVID under there, because that gave them liability. But up until they changed that definition for self-serving reasons, the mRNA treatments were not vaccines. So I prefer to stick with the proper terminology and say, well, let's not call these vaccines. They're a different class. And consequently, they are exceedingly dangerous in ways that the traditional vaccines aren't. So you are seeing with these vaccines tremendous amount of debility and death, and sudden adult death, especially in young males between about 18 and 35 to 40, sudden death in those, is linked to the damage to hearts that these DNA or RNA treatments were given. So we have tens of thousands of cases. And yet these products are still on the market. In the past, if a vaccine had maybe 10 or 20 or 30 deaths related to the vaccine, it was pulled from the market. And yet now we have 10,000s and it's still there.
And so I got us onto that. I didn't mean to take us into the COVID, but you're right. It is an injection. Thank you so much for that. So I want to come back because we are talking about sudden infant death, a term that in the 70s. Never had really heard of it before, and people were wondering if children were covered too much, if they were breathing their own air, what possibly could be. All right, so here I'm going to talk. This is from it was posted by Faithful Free Mamas, and here's the fun of this: is that it's a lot of moms and a lot of non-mainstream or traditional news sites that are breaking these stories and giving us good information on the social media websites. All right, so she's saying. They did a study that showed babies that were vaxxed with the DTP or the DTaP had alarms. They had alarms on them for respiratory. I am not sure, but the alarms were going off 4 hours after the injection, showing respiratory distress, and then again 5 to 7 days, and then again 16 days. And you mentioned 2, 4, and 6 months checks, earlier in the conversation. And on one of the other videos today, someone said that's when we see a rise, 2, 4, 6 months. Is when we see a rise in sudden infant death. So I'm just going to say, I don't think we should call it SIDS. I think we should call it SIDS. I think we should call it vaccine-induced death. I'm not a medical professional. That would just be my unmedical opinion.
Well, I think vaccines are certainly contributory, but they're not the only reason. And there used to be a lot more of these sudden deaths, unexplained deaths, than there are now. And yet the vaccine schedule has greatly increased. So I think much more study needs to be done. First of all, I don't have a lot of confidence that studies are designed and executed correctly. So when a lot of the mainstream medical world is coming out and saying these incidences of unexplained death in infants under 6 months old, and we don't know why, but they don't have anything to do with vaccines, here's the data. Well, you really need to look at the design of those studies, because many times these study designs are not legitimate. I don't call them research, I call them pre-search, because they decided ahead of time what outcome they want, and then they kind of design the study to affect that. So I agree with you. These vaccines and these sudden kind of unexplained deaths in infants needs to be studied much more closely. It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen to one child. So we have about 2,000 a year right now that happen like this, and nobody can really explain unilaterally what is causing them. But of course, when you inject these kind of toxins in children and cause an inflammation in the neurologic structures of the brain and the brainstem, where breathing is controlled, consciousness is controlled, obviously there has to be a link. It just hasn't been investigated because the interest in that kind of investigation is recent, not before.
And those who would have interest in it don't want the investigation, I think. We've got to go to our break. We better get to it since we're combining 1 and 2. I am talking with Dr. Linda Johnston. We're talking about your children. We're talking about being informed before you allow your child to be injected. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. The Tamara Scott Show.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
And as you know, we always offer you the Bella Grace elixir in this slender little sachet. It looks like a beauty product in a pretty little package, and it is. But it's also a powerful supplement. The collagen cat's claw and astaxanthin got an award in 2022 for cognitive function, and in 2023 in the sports arena for active ingredients, nutrition, and format. But the best is what most of you notice. You are viewers, you are friends on the Tamara Scott Show. And when you started talking about what you had seen, then I realized I had noticed, for instance, I had noticed my eyes were not watering nearly as much when I read, or the computer vision syndrome, or it helped alleviate the dry eyes. It's on the sheet. Many of you noticed that, but I did not think about it coming from this little sachet. I was wondering what I'd done to make it different. I hadn't changed my glasses. I hadn't changed anything else. That had to be it. But also the better joint health, improved mobility, improved immunity, stress management, endurance, less fatigue, muscle recovery, mental clarity, focus, and gut health, as well as the fun benefits that you all notice. Many of you notice. Firmer and smoother skin texture, fewer fine lines and wrinkles, improved skin elasticity, decreased age spots, more even skin tone, improved skin hydration, reduced oxidative stress, healthier nails, less cellulite, hair health, and better sleep. Now, you call those cosmetics if you want, but maybe they're just byproducts of being healthier. So you can find more information at Tamara, TAMARA.BellaGraceGlobal.com, Tamara.BellaGraceGlobal.com, where you can find before and after photos, informational videos, and their other skincare products, their skincare system, all at Tamara, TAMARA.BellaGraceGlobal.com. All right, Dr. Linda Johnston is my guest. Now, Thomas, can we go to number 4? I want to play the quick link at number 4. We'll play it in the background. We won't put any volume with it. But it just says it's a toddler holding an infant. And the text reads, when we get to it, you never hear anyone say my baby died right before a wellness check. Because it doesn't happen. It happens after the check. And so that's what we're talking about. And as Linda said, there needs to be a lot more studied. But Dr. Pierre Corey, at the same time, said he had twins. He was talking about twins, toddler twins, who died 24 hours after receiving a vaccination, both twins. And he said it's not uncommon, and it happens. And when it happens with two twins, there has to be some correlation somewhere, something. So I can get you those videos. If any of you want those, you email it theTamaraScottShow@gmail.com. I'm just repeating what others, Dr. Pierre Corey, Dr. Paul Thomas, we're talking with Dr. Linda Johnston. And so also in that video we just played, the text said, in the review of 1,244 children, child death reports with available death certificates and autopsy records, 44% were attributed to SIDS. That's nearly half. And here's where it gets chilling. 79.4% of those children had received more than one vaccine on the exact same day. 79.4% of those children had received more than one vaccine on the exact same day. And this is where we say, parents, you can't blame yourself. It's not going to do any good at this point. If you've had an adverse reaction, you need to put it before the Lord. But for every other parent out there, we want you to have the information in front of you so nobody else suffers what too many have suffered already. All right, Linda, you want to comment on that before we kind of switch over a little bit?
Well, I agree that vaccine should be questioned. No, I mean, I'm not in favor of these schedule of childhood vaccines for many, many reasons. But I also think that it's very difficult to decide what's doing what when you have so many vaccines given within that 6-month period. So if you, in that 6-month period, by the age of 6 months, about 75% of children have that full complement. And some of the up to 95% have the full complement of MMR and some of the more classic vaccines. So it just statistically, it's going to happen that with that many, that highest percent of children receiving those vaccines, it's hard to know what's correlating to what, because you don't really have an adequate control group. So in my mind, that statistic you just mentioned brings up the big question, my gosh, something strange is happening here. We really need to look into it further. But trying to tease out the fact that the overwhelming majority of children do have that. So many of those children don't have this sudden infant problem. So the statistics need to be looked at much more thoroughly. Now, for me, if I have a child, even if the chance is 1 in 500,000 that that vaccine is going to cause my child to suddenly die for no apparent reason, I'm going to be very skeptical of it. And on the other hand, what are these vaccines protecting these children from? How serious are some of these diseases that we're taking such great risk to immunize them for?
So that's where I want to go next. So before I do, Reuters has an article with a Martha Sharon, a CDC spokesperson, and I'm looking for a date on that. I don't see the date. It was 2024, I believe. But she's talking to Reuters about the exact same thing you're mentioning, that vaccination and death occurred on the same day in 206 of the 1,700 or 1,770 deaths. So she said that's 11% of the death reports with autopsy report and death certificate data. So it's not, as you say, it's not a majority, it's not a large number, so it does perhaps need more investigation. And hopefully with Robert Kennedy there, we can look into it and get some real authentic investigating into that. All right, so I want to come to the next topic you just raised. What do these really help? What we talked about hepatitis B, not really something a newborn would need under healthy circumstances and under most normal circumstances. All right, so DTaP and HB shots. Let's play the video with no sound, number 5. If we can play that video, number 5, while we're talking. This talks about DTaP. It says 1 in 1,000 babies with DTaP vaxxed will suffer 3 hours of crying, after which could indicate encephalitis or swelling in the brain. So Dr. Johnston, even if it's not death, a child in pain, they can't say, Mom, my head is throbbing, or I feel this. They just cry. 3 hours of crying. And I know a lot of people just put Benadryl or Tylenol in their systems, which I think is also a concern to quiet them. But could it be that their brain is swelling like this says, encephalitis?
Well, it's true, because the crying that happens isn't the normal crying a child is hungry or has wet nappies, or it's a type of, we call it a brain cry. It's a real piercing, penetrating, shrill kind of crying that is from excruciating pain. And anybody who's had a migraine headache or even a hangover headache, you know that sometimes that brain pain is excruciating. So the biggest problem is that the vaccines and their adjuvant chemicals like mercury and aluminum are designed on purpose to create a immunological response. So the whole point of the vaccine is to get the body to respond, and theoretically, this is their idea, is that causes the body then to be prepared to attack if the real organism causing those diseases comes into the body. So it's like prepping the body to have an immune response. Well, the problem with this is that immune response is the body is not at 2 months, 4 months, and 6 months old, is not really designed to have that kind of response artificially induced into it. So it's not prepared. The brain is not prepared, doesn't have the protections in it, the blood-brain barrier and some of the other protections, so that it causes this wholesale inflammation in an organism that's too immature to be safely have that. So we don't expect our 2-month-old children to pick up 30 pounds. We don't expect our 6-month children to pick up 30 pounds. If they tried it, they would hurt themselves because their body is not mature enough to handle that. Now, when you get older and the muscles and bones and everything is mature, then they can lift that kind of weight. So if you think about, we're bypassing the skin, bypassing the nasal membranes, bypassing the other things that are designed to protect the child, and injecting them with multiple different vaccines that have toxic heavy metal and other chemicals in them, the body is going to be damaged by that. Now, that damage, how do we know that it is even proper for an immune system that's not developed to force it to try to respond in a way as if it was a developed immune system? It's not. Right. It's not developed. You can't teach your 2-month-old the ABCs because the brain is not developed enough to be able to do that. But later, at 5 years old, you can. So the same with the immune system. Why are you expecting the immune system to properly respond when it's not developed and it hasn't got the mechanism to respond properly? And what happens then is you've damaged the immune system. And if you do a correlation between the kind of things we know as chronic disease and adult immune disorders, everything from thyroid to arterial sclerosis to arthritis and diabetes and other kind of things that have known to be related to immune system malfunction, like food allergies also and regular allergies. Why aren't these adults having an immune system that properly responds in a mature and appropriate way? Well, I propose that we need to investigate how damaged they become with childhood vaccines.
All right. And so I'll close out this segment with this. In that same video we just watched, it said rotavirus and Hib shots are associated with type 1 diabetes. Rotavirus equals a 7-fold increase. The Hib, I don't even know what the Hib shot is, HIB, is how they've spelled it, is 26% higher. That's, well, HIB, that's what they call the hepatitis. Instead of hep, they put HIB.
They can, yeah.
Okay. And then they do say 3.1 times more likely to be diagnosed with multiple sclerosis after receiving the Hep B shot. So that one they do call it the Hep B shot. 3.1 times more likely to be diagnosed with multiple sclerosis after receiving a hepatitis B shot. Just think about that. We've got to go to break here real quickly. Before we do, I'm going to talk to you about our NUMI. And it seems timely as we're discussing this. The lavenders for ladies, these are called NutriSwishes. You can go to NumiInnuMI.com/TTSS, NEUMI.com/TTSS. The lavenders for ladies, there are no hormonal supplements, though if you're taking some, you might just want to check with your doctor. The blue is for anybody over 18, and it has the glutathione, which apparently is a good thing you need in your system. The glutathione will help you detox heavy metals, forever chemicals, graphene oxide, and glyphosate. The graphene oxide, something we hadn't heard about until many were coerced to get injections in the last couple of years. And the glyphosate, you would recognize in ag products if we said the name. There's concern on the glyphosate being linked to cancers, HPVs, and diabetes. This just helps detox the glyphosate, graphene oxide, heavy metals, forever chemicals. Now, there's another product called the Numi Neuro. It's in the same shape bottle, but more of a tangerine or mango colored bottle. It's called Numi Neuro. When used with this bottle, we're seeing great results to the point where the American Brain Council actually wrote such an encouraging review of it that it's similar to an endorsement. That bottle you see is called Numi Neuro. Numi Neuro. It is helpful with the mind, memory, and the focus. Many folks were concerned about brain fog, and memory lapses after whether it was a vaccination or whether it was a virus. And so with that blue and that mango colored bottle, the results are very, very positive for many. So you can get that at NumiInnuMI.com/TTSS, and we've got to go to break. Stay tuned. Thanks for staying tuned. I am Tamara Scott. You're listening to The Tamara Scott Show, where we help you live God's Word in today's world when the headlines hit home. This book, Linda, when did you write this book, Everyday Miracles? Linda Johnston, MD, D.HT. How do I say DHT? Was that Doctor of
PhD. It's a diplomat in homeotherapeutics, so that's my homeopathy designation. I wrote that in 1991, so a long time ago.
You were ahead of the curve. You were way ahead of the curve. All right.
Well, that isn't always a pleasant place to be, but I'm so glad that I have so many others joining me, and we're finding each other as far as warning people. Too much of a good thing is bad, and medicine has gotten so out of range. I do think that if I can leave two messages. One is do your own research. Don't take my word for it. Don't take anybody's word for it. Investigate. And don't even believe all the things you investigate, because there are all kinds of information out there, and you're an intelligent adult. You don't have to be a biologist to know what a woman is, to quote a infamous example, but you can look at data, you can look at information, gather different points of view, and do your own investigations and come and question everything. So that would be one thing, that it's not only for your child's health, but your health. There is way too much dependence on pharmaceuticals. And I think a statistic I heard recently is that over 50% of children at the age of 10 are already taking at least one medication. And I find that appalling. So do your own research and keep doing your research, keep learning and investigating, especially before you put anything pharmaceutical in your body or your child's body. And the second thing I would say is find like-minded people. There are all kinds of organizations now, and the internet has made that possible, to surround yourself with like-minded people who will help guide you, and you can guide them into finding good resources. And that will help you so you don't really feel alone, that you're trying to battle these things all by yourself. Those two things I would like to leave your audience with.
Thank you, and well said, and I'm glad you got them in there. We've mentioned raising lions, not sheep. If you've got young kids and you're dealing with this issue, I think from what I've seen, it looks like she might be a good source to follow. And she says most of us got these routine jabs to protect kids and came through it with a few itchy spots, little issue, right? Back to school. But tucked in the inside of the fine print, where they hope most parents never look, she said the chickenpox vaccine admits that meningitis is a possible adverse reaction to the chickenpox shot. Meningitis, a serious, potentially life-threatening inflammation of the brain and spinal cord, or a shot that's supposed to protect against chickenpox. Well, we can argue all day long whether that's even necessary or even a good idea, but we have heard more cases about meningitis, and oftentimes in college, or maybe a student has maybe gotten some type of an updated vaccination before they head off to school, and I have to wonder if maybe that's why we're hearing it. Linda, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but when you're talking to us about, make sure, do your homework, read about whatever it is that your child may be facing, but then is it necessary? Dr. Pierre Corey says there are myths, right? What are the myths? Is it even necessary? Is it even effective? Do they really eradicate whatever disease it is, or were those diseases already on their way out before these supposed vaccinations came in?
Well, that's really true. That's really true. Things like smallpox and measles and these other things, pertussis, they were already declining long before the vaccines for them. And the things that made a difference were better nutrition, better hygiene. Hygiene was responsible for so much improvement in these things that then the vaccines came in and kind of took the glory. But one thing I really want to emphasize is because parents say, well, look, what am I going to do to protect my child if I don't give the measles vaccine, if I don't give the pneumococcal vaccine, et cetera? Well, the very best way to protect your child is to have a healthy child. That means a loving home. That means no having external kind of unusual stresses, to have a child that has good nutrition, that is growing and being raised in a good environment, and not to disrupt the natural development of the immune system. So one thing that we have now gotten some interest in is the Amish. And when you look at the Amish, there are no autistic children in the Amish population. Their incidence of any of these kind of problems is extremely low or absent. Why is that? They don't vaccinate. They raise their children on really healthy food they grow themselves or they can themselves. Now, I'm not suggesting that you grow your own food, but I am suggesting that you make sure there's nutritious food, not only for the body, but for the mind. How many times I've seen a mother plunk their child down and put that screen in front of them so the mother can go off and do something else and keep the child entertained. Well, you're giving junk food to the brain. So, being a parent is demanding, and it is hard in our lifestyle to do that, but that's what's going to protect your child from these diseases so that they do not need those immunizations.
Thank you so much, Dr. Linda Johnston. And Thomas, if you want to put up the last photo 9, she mentioned it. She's right on the ball, right with what I was thinking. If you can put photo 9 up, processed food is the most abused anxiety drug. Fasting is the most forgotten cure. Exercise is the most underused antidepressant. Sleep is the most neglected recovery tool. And nature is the most overlooked stress reliever. So much of what we need is already there and doesn't cost us anything. Now, the processed food is a little cheaper oftentimes than the other foods or the time to fix your meal, but you'll be and actually I think it's cheaper if you'll fix your meal than going out to eat. But the ingredients sometimes may not seem organic, may not seem less expensive than some of your other
even
products.
Without organic, just fresh fruits and vegetables or things like that. And one thing that I did read this morning, and I was going to send it to you, but it was a little quip that said, our children are not born with a pharmaceutical deficiency that must be remedied with vaccines.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. So you can get the book, Everyday Miracles. If you'd like to do that, it's still available on Amazon, even though she was way above the curve. 30 years ago, you wrote that. Oh, my goodness. And to everybody out there, we just want to help you do the best you can in taking care of the children God has loaned you. And so we tell you, live boldly, love better, laugh bigger, be encouraged, and never be complacent.